G'day everyone, Michael Taylor at 64 Motorsport, and today we're working on my E46. Yay! So as you can see, I've already started on the engine removal and gearbox removal on my E46. Now if you're a little bit curious as to why I'm going through this rather extreme step, perhaps you want to catch up on this earlier video here, links up there. But in this video I'll also give a bit more detail in terms of why I'm going through this whole process. We'll get the engine out, have a close look at it, and also run through the reasons as to why I'm doing this. In this video, what I'm going to do is finish getting the engine completely out. As you can see, I've removed a lot of gear off the engine alternator, power steering pump, aircon, removed all the aircon lines, also pretty much most of the electrical harnesses. The intake had to come off anyway because I need access to that rear bolt or to that rear mount. I've taken the exhaust headers off, all designed to give me as much clearance as possible, and there's probably a few extra steps than what you traditionally make, but for me I've got really limited space, particularly at the front of the car here, so I've had to push the E46 pretty much it's touching the back wall, but that's going to give me enough clearance at the front here to be able to lift the engine and the gearbox out, pull it back this way, spin it round, and then give me a bit of space to be able to remove the gearbox and then get the engine up onto the engine stand. I've got the bonnet off as well, just to give me clearance to be able to not be restricted in terms of how high I can lift the crane. It may not have been necessary, but for 4 bolts and 10 minutes work, it's worth the effort rather than trying to do it while you've got the engine half out. Now, one of the things I will say though is that when I've disconnected everything, aside from making sure that every single pipe and electrical wire or hose or whatever has been disconnected that I could see, I unbolted the engine from the engine mounts at the top where it connects to the engine. I really should have disconnected it from underneath where the engine mounts or the rubber engine mount connects to the subframe, because what happens is when you lift it, because the engine's on a slant, all the weight tends to want to transfer to that right hand side, and then when you lift it with the crane, it's just naturally going to want to every day this lady goes to start a car and that damn alarm goes off. I'm just glad she doesn't start work at 5 o'clock in the morning. Anyway, but what I was saying is, yeah, when you first take the weight with the crane, the whole engine starts to want to tilt towards that right hand side, so the engine tends to get hung up on that right hand engine mount. So by disconnecting it from underneath, that probably would have solved that problem. But other than that, all the work is in disconnecting everything: exhaust, tail shaft, gearbox shifter, gearbox mounts, bonnet, all the hoses and things like that. So to actually lift the engine out only took me maybe an hour. A lot of jigging around, a lot of curse words, swearing, that sort of thing. But it happened without losing any fingers or toes. So what I'm going to do is lift this up a little bit more, pull it out, set it down in here, and we'll have a close look at it, and I'll start to run through the reasons why I want to pull the engine and the upgrades I'm going to make to my supercharged E46 325 Ci. Okay, so the engine's out, and that I thought was relatively straightforward because I'd done all the hard work yesterday. The reason I didn't film that is because there's so many videos on people pulling engines out. You don't need to see all that stuff again. So I wanted in this video to focus more on the reasons why and the upgrades that I'm going to make, and give you a bit of a look at the condition of an engine which has done just a bit over 200,000 Ks. Now, I had done some sort of cleanup work on the engine, basically cleaned up stuff that I could access when I was doing some of the other upgrades, like the camshafts and the engine mounts and all that sort of thing. There are some places where it probably looks a little bit better, but there are signs of when I've had various oil leaks, like in the valve cover and around the dipstick O-ring and things like that. So let's have a close look and see what this engine actually looks like. Okay, so what have we got? So yeah, oil filter housing, that cap's loose. I loosened it off when I drained the oil. Down in here, this is underneath the intake manifold. I've got these sort of blocked up. I'm not too worried, but yeah, keep it as clean as I can because I'm pulling the head anyway, so I wasn't, you know, it was probably extra precaution. As you can see, I'd gone through and I have labelled, you know, any of the wires and that as I've been pulling them out. This water line is a hard plastic water line, and this is one that's prone to failure, but as you can see, you've got to remove the intake manifold to be able to get to it. While ever you've got, say, the intake manifold off, it's probably worthwhile replacing these two hard lines just for preventative maintenance and saving you having to do it later on. As you can see, it's pretty dirty, and these are sort of areas which you can't traditionally access. What's that? It's a bit of, oh, that's probably the old ring on one of the plastic hoses for the CCV. When I changed that, probably just dropped down in there. Rubbish. Over there. This is your Vanos feed line, goes from the back of the oil filter housing. But yeah, this side's pretty dirty, coming back to the gearbox, and it's just, yeah, from a few different oil leaks, it's not too bad. On the other side, it looks reasonably clean because I've been able to tidy that up a fair bit. So let me get the camera back up onto the stand and we'll run through some of the other changes that I plan to make. So one of the things I wanted to run through is the reason why I've ripped the engine out. And I'd sort of highlighted this on my previous E46 video when I attempted to do the first startup. There were some modifications which I'd always wanted to do, which I never got around to doing. As you may or may not be aware, I've got a supercharger from VF Engineering, so I've bought their kit. And I've also installed a more aggressive, performance-orientated Schrick camshafts as well. So with the increased lift and duration, I was really concerned about running the standard, now the lights come out, sorry. So one of the things I was really concerned about was utilising the existing valves and valve springs. I'm not going to know what the condition of the valves is like until I get the head off, but my main concern was with the valve springs and their ability to cope with that extended lift and duration. So I've got a set of Supertech valve springs which I want to install. Plus what I'll do while I'm in there is refresh all the, I guess, wear components in the valve train. So that's the valve seals, valve guides in the timing area, replace the primary and secondary valve chains and all the chain guides and chain tensioner as well. I'll also give the head a little bit of a clean up. I'll send it off, resurface if necessary, and get it hot dip to clean out all the gunk. And then I might do some port matching for the intake and the exhaust as well. So my plans on the exhaust side is to custom fabricate a set of headers. Those of you who've asked about my progress on that, it's still coming, and this will be a really good opportunity to get that nutted down and finalised. On the intake side, I've managed to pick up a intake manifold from the 3-litre engines, M54B30, and that included the 3-litre throttle body as well. So I'm going to install that. Now I'm not really sure what difference it's going to make. Theoretically, it should be an improvement over the original intake setup and throttle body. So we'll see how we go there. Down below in the oil pan, when I did the oil pan gasket, I didn't have an opportunity to make the changes to the oil pump. I guess it's more preventative sort of an upgrade there. It doesn't really affect performance, but it's more a safety factor. And I've got from Achilles Motorsport their uprated oil pump shaft and tyre wire securing nut. There is a tendency in high rev applications for the nut that secures the, I guess, the cog to the primary timing chain, for that nut to work loose. So by using the tyre wire, it secures it and is a safety factor. The other thing I'm going to do while I've got the oil pan off is I've got the Achilles Motorsport oil pan baffle, and that's once again just a little bit of protection to stop the oil from slushing around on high brake and a lot of cornering and things like that. So that's what's going on down below. So while I've got the engine out, I'm going to get the car up. I'm going to take out the rear subframe assembly, and I'm going to take advantage of being able to put in the subframe reinforcement on the rear, and that's the Turner Motorsport rear subframe kit. From my research, it seems like a really good kit and sort of covers off on strengthening up the rear subframe in those potential weak points. So that's my plans, and that's the reason why I've rip the engine out. There's going to be some really good content coming out on my E46, and I'm going to run through a lot of the work that I do and hopefully be able to get that filmed. So I've invested a little bit in some additional camera equipment to make that possible. So if you've enjoyed the video, please don't forget to hit that like button. If you've got any questions in terms of the plans I have and the upgrades that I'm making to my E46, please leave me a comment below. If you'd like to see more content about my supercharged BMW E46 325ci or my E53 X5 and Yamaha R6, then consider subscribing and ringing the bell so you get a notification every time I upload a new video. As always, I've enjoyed your company for today. Thank you very much for watching. And until we meet again, look after yourselves, stay safe, and TTFN.